Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? Alright, so we are at another point in our video of the Google spreadsheet for Lord's Mobile. Now, I keep this updated somewhat often, so you won't have too much to worry about. But, so, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give you guys an understanding of just like what these tabs are for and how to use them. So this tab here is the resources tab. Now the resources tab is pretty straightforward as far as like what you're using it for. As you can tell, this block here is really not to be used. You don't need to worry about that block, so ignore it. But essentially what you have here, okay, is a set of multipliers. Alright, and the multipliers are basically the amount of resources that it's going to take, you know, in your bag. So if you've got, you know, a couple thousands, 1500s, 2000s, etc. So if, let's suppose I've only got 10 of these, then I can actually see in real time how much I have in total. So you can use this to keep track of just how many you have in stock. This comes in handy if you guys are tier 4 players, tier 3 players, and you're starting to print troops in bulk. So again, make use of this tab, it's really helpful. Of course, we're going to move over to the Holy Stars tab, and we'll start moving on from here. So the Holy Stars tab is the same exact idea. You just put in the quantity of whatever amount of Holy Stars you have, and it will calculate and tell you how many Holy Stars you have in total. Of course, this doesn't become relevant unless, of course, you're stacking them. And same thing with speed ups. In fact, in here you can actually calculate how many normal speed ups you have, how many research speed ups you have, and it will tell you the hour, total hours that you have, the total number of days, and it will even calculate that in total for you between those types up here. And then this here, I will explain this in a bit, but we will get into it here in just a second. So now moving over to the energy tab. The energy tab is, again, the same exact concept as like the Holy Stars tab. You will put in how much you have of whatever type of bagged energy you have on hand, and this will calculate how much you have total. The items tab. Now this tab here, you've probably have seen this tab before. All this tab is basically a really easy and quick way to basically, if you want to, you could click on here and basically sort through without having to go inside the workshop. You could sort through the minimum levels, the amount of army attack, army defense, HP, etc. You could very easily sort out what pieces of gear and to what sets those go to. I've kept this somewhat updated, so this is all new. It's not old. It's up to date. And of course, I will update this as new content arrives for the gear sets, if any at all comes. And I try to keep this frequently updated. Again, the link to this spreadsheet will be in the description below. Now, of course, moving on, gear types. Now this here, again, this is just my personal, basically this is, if you're picking the best types of gear for certain, setups, if we're talking, let's say what's the best, absolute best set for infantry, absolute best set for range, absolute, etc. And then of course if you're doing mixed. So I have these sets out so that I can determine what are the stats that I'm getting. Again, this spreadsheet's purely a personal thing for me, but of course you guys may find this handy. It's what I would say will work best in those slots. Of course, we've seen the resources tab. Now the treasure trove. Now this is a little tool that if you guys know who Franz is, this is a tool that Franz was very, very generous to spread on his Discord. But I, shout out to Franz. In case you guys don't know who Franz is, I will have a link to his Twitch channel below. Feel free to check him out. All props to this guy for this wonderful treasure trove calculator. But what this does is basically you can keep track of what amount of gems you will get based on the level and the level of your researches and the number of days upon which you are researching. So if you want to know what total number of gems you will get, this will become pretty handy. especially if you guys want to be able to sit down and say, well, what happens if I add level 10 and level 10? How many gems am I getting a month? Here you go. Now, army composition. This is for those of you who are in doing rallies. Again, you guys have probably had your fair share of, well, how the hell do they know how many units they need? And so it's pretty simple. All you need to do is put in whatever amount of total troops you can send. Most of the time it will be 250,000 for most of you. And then in here you can then determine, well, does he want a 50-70, a 30-20? Okay, so maybe he wants 2 of these and 2 of these. Well, there you go. A 40-40 means you need 100K, 100K, and 50K. Very easy, quick, easy way to know what total number of troops you need to be sending. Army modeling. This tab here goes into a little bit more in-depth with trap accounts and stuff of that nature. So let's say you guys want to know what your infirm capacity will be at a certain number of manors or a certain number of infirmaries, etc. What this does is basically you can set in the total number of infirmaries that you have, and it will tell you what the infirm capacity will be. This comes in handy because then you can actually determine, well, how many troops am I saving. Of course, you can, in here, this is remarkably familiar to the Army Composition tab, but what this does is this will actually tell you if you want to have 3 million, 500K and 670K, this will actually do the math for you to determine, how much might, how many troops do you have, what's the upkeep going to be, what's the capacity, what do you need to expect from that setup. So in this case, maybe I want, I don't know, like a million of these. If you actually put in the ratios, you'll see that that will all correlate and transfer and change based on what you input here. So it comes in handy because it'll tell you basically what you have. This is organized by the unit types, and this is obviously organized by the actual type of unit you're using. So if, of course, a lot of this here technically correlates with this a little bit. This is kind of like the same idea behind this, but like instead of this correlating to, like, think of this kind of like it's one block. So like this here will calculate data and transfer over here, but the data that's put into here, let's suppose I put like 1,000, you'll see that that correlates to these numbers over here. So I'll show you just to pay attention. What is this changing? Okay, you see how this number here is being messed with? You see how that works? And then if I switch this number here, you see how that's messing with this? All that does is basically, if I'm going to have whatever unit types and whatever I have here, this is just going to correlate into whatever you're getting over here. So it's nothing complicated. And again, this just tells you how many troops you've got, among other things. Pretty simple. Because again, if you change this data here, it will change this data down there. So this kind of here just kind of gives you an idea of, like, input your numbers of whatever unit types you want into what types, and then these are basically your totals. And of course, a lot of this down here, in case you guys are wondering what is this and why is this important. Okay, so this here is like irrelevant. Don't ignore a lot of the time and hours and stuff. This here is when I was actually doing some manual calculations for time. I'm actually trying to figure out a way to do that troop training calculator that I sent you guys in the other video that you may have came from, and essentially that I was trying to do a manual calculator. I'm still working on it, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we actually don't need that website anymore and we'll have it all in one place. But for the most part, what I have in here is basically all of the amount of resources per type and the amount of might it takes per unit type. So if you guys want the actual ratios, instead of having to go through there manually and having to look at your barracks and check, this is a really quick and easy place to just grab those values and then do your math accordingly. Of course, the food production rate here is for those of you who want to actually know, well, what is your food production going to look like. this kind of gives you an idea of just what that production rate will look like. And of course, you know, it's neat because it's yeah, it helps out a lot. I wouldn't really bother with it too much though. This is my setup for hero lineups, and of course I've used these myself, and I've found these to be pretty useful. So take it or leave it, of course. Like I said, this does not include all hero types, but this is generally this is for anybody to everybody, free to play. This is not all of it is, you know, some of it's pay to play in there, you know, for some of those that are pay to play, but most of this is all for the free to play. So if you guys want to know what monsters, what you know, what heroes to use on certain monsters, then this is for you. And of course, last and not least, the research tab. So if you guys wanted to keep track of what I was talking about earlier with the speed ups tab, you can actually input manually what your research is and the amount of time it is taking you, and you can then take what you have in comparison to what you know will take here, and you can then compare, and you will actually know how many hours you are away from that research. And of course, if you want to do multiple researches at a time, you can then do it in here as well. And that will also come in handy. And of course, I put it up as tier 4 research because at the time, that's what I was doing, was pushing tier 4 research. And so I was calculating based on how many hours I had, I could then determine how much I needed in order to do the rest of this researches all at the same time. Of course, if you use the chronological naming system here that I have, you know, again, I have it from anything from military to upgraded fences. If you wanted to create more of these trees, all I have to do is basically click on this, change the name to let's say economy. Okay, you would name that convention inside here, and then you would go over to your tree, add a new row, and then what you will want to do is add your economy like so. Okay, pay attention. All right, this is, you know, basically what you're doing, and then you go over here and you press economy, and you'll see that what this does here is it actually goes through and it calculates. What you'll need to do is click on this and open this up and paste, and then what you'll need to do, all right, to begin. How do I do this, and how does it know? It's a pretty easy thing. So what this does is it goes from A4 to A9, and it looks for something called military. So how do I change it to where it looks for, well, simply put, what I'm looking for? Now, if you look in here, notice this says military as well. There's not really a whole lot of rhyme and reason as to why that is. It's just, I mean, you could put in whatever you wanted in these spots here, really, you know, and it's not gonna make a whole lot of difference. Of course, this here you'll have to copy and paste. You know, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, or, you know, in whatever amount of whatever it be. All right. And then in here, it's actually calculating based on what you have in terms of what you've got. You'll actually see that when I've input the ratios, immediately it knows that, oh, this is economy. It tells you what that research is. Now, how is it that you can get this work? You just copy, paste, and there you go. It pulls the ratio of this right here and brings it straight over here for you. So if you had multiple researches for economy, voila. Really easy, and of course you can input your research speed, and this will correlate with it. So if your, you know, time was like 405, then, I mean, there you go. You can actually figure out how much of a difference that does to your research, among other things. Of course, make sure that you add in the percentage sign, because this will have a drastic effect. And basically 405 makes it like 400 and gajillion. You actually have to add the percentage so that it doesn't get off. Of course, that is the Google spreadsheet for Lords Mobile, and I hope that you guys found this somewhat useful. Feel free to like and subscribe, and give me some comments below and some feedback as to what you guys think of this. Again, I will, I do not take credit for this calculator at all. This is a combination of community-based calculators that I have found and put together for you. So just a disclaimer, I do not claim this, but I will tell you that this video's sole purpose was to teach you how to use this spreadsheet and how to make use of it while playing Lords Mobile, and I hope that you guys have found this somewhat useful.